There comes a moment in every parent's life when you start questioning everything. Did I raise them right? Did I teach them the values that matter? Or did I spoil them so much that they forgot where they came from? I'm Richard Caldwell. 72 years old. And for the last 40 years, I built an empire from nothing. Started with a small hardware store, turned it into a chain of 15 across 3 states. Real estate, investments, the works. I'm worth about $18 million. Not bad for a kid who grew up sharing one room with 3 brothers, right? But here's the thing about wealth, it changes people. Especially the people around you. My son, Daniel. My only child. I gave him everything. Private schools, college overseas, a brand new car on his 16th birthday, a job at my company with a salary most people only dream about. I handed him success on a silver platter. And you know what? I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was setting him up for life. But lately I've been noticing things. The way he talks to service workers. The way he looks at people who aren't dressed in designer clothes. The way his wife, Jessica, rolls her eyes when I talk about my childhood. The way my grandkids, Emma and Jake, seem more interested in their phones than in spending time with their old grandpa. 6 months ago, my wife Margaret passed away. Cancer. It was brutal. And in those final days, she held my hand and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Richard, I'm worried about Daniel. I'm worried we created a monster we can't control anymore." I didn't want to believe her. But deep down, I knew she was right. So I made a decision. A crazy, probably stupid decision. But I had to know. I had to know who my son really was when the money was gone. When the power was stripped away. When I was just a father who needed help. I decided to fake my own financial ruin. It took me 3 months to plan everything perfectly. I worked with my oldest friend and lawyer, Tom Harrison. Together, we created a story that would be believable. A failed investment. A Ponzi scheme I supposedly fell for. Lawsuits. Bankruptcy filings. The works. We leaked the story to the business community. Made sure it reached Daniel through his colleagues, not through me directly. I wanted him to hear it the way the world would hear it. I wanted to see his genuine reaction. I sold my mansion. Moved into a tiny studio apartment on the east side of town. The kind of place I lived in when I was 25, struggling to make rent. I donated most of my clothes to charity, keeping only the old, worn-out ones. I stopped getting my hair cut at the expensive salon. Let it grow a bit wild, a bit gray, a bit poor. I looked in the mirror one morning and barely recognized myself. I looked like my father did in his final years. Tired. Worn down. Forgotten. Tom helped me transfer all my assets into a trust that Daniel knew nothing about. On paper, Richard Caldwell was broke. Completely wiped out. A cautionary tale of greed and bad decisions. The hardest part? Not calling my son for 3 months. Not seeing my grandchildren. Waiting for him to reach out. To check on me. To ask if I was okay. He never did. Not once in 94 days did my phone ring with his name on it. Not once did he show up at my door. I heard through Tom that Daniel had been telling people his father finally got what was coming to him after years of risky decisions. That hurt more than I can explain. But it also confirmed what I needed to know. This test had to continue. So I decided to take it one step further. I decided to show up at his house. Unannounced. Poor. Hungry. In need of help. I wanted to see what he would do when his embarrassing, broke father showed up asking for a meal. It was a Thursday evening. I remember because Daniel always hosted family dinners on Thursdays. My wife started that tradition years ago, and somehow it stuck. I put on my most worn-out jacket, shoes with holes in the soles, and I walked. Walked 15 blocks to his gated community. The security guard didn't even recognize me. He actually asked if I was lost. When I finally stood at his front door, my heart was pounding. Part of me hoped I was wrong. Part of me prayed he'd open that door, hug me tight, and tell me everything would be okay. I knocked 3 times. And what happened next changed everything. Jessica answered the door. My daughter-in-law. She looked at me like I was a homeless person asking for spare change. There was genuine disgust in her eyes before recognition even set in. Richard, she said, her voice filled with shock and something else, embarrassment maybe. Hi, Jessica. Is Daniel home? I was hoping I could join you all for dinner tonight. She didn't move. Just stood there, blocking the doorway like I might contaminate her pristine home. I could hear laughter inside. My grandchildren. Daniel's voice. The sound of family. The sound of everything I'd lost. Daniel, she called out, not taking her eyes off me. Your father is here. The way she said, your father, stung. Like she was announcing an unwanted solicitor. Daniel appeared behind her. My son. The boy I raised. The man I created. He looked good. Designer shirt, expensive watch, perfectly styled hair. He looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Was it shame? Anger? Pity? Dad. What are you doing here? I was hoping I could have dinner with you all. It's Thursday. We always had Thursday dinners, remember? A long silence. Jessica touched Daniel's arm. A subtle gesture, but I caught it. A warning. Don't you dare let him in. Dad, this isn't really a good time. We have guests coming over. Business associates of mine. Important people. And you. You look. I look what, son? Poor. His face hardened. I didn't say that. But you meant it. Jessica stepped in, her voice sickly sweet. Richard, we're just worried about you. Maybe you should go to a shelter or something. They have programs for people in your situation. We'd be happy to look up some resources for you. A shelter. My own daughter-in-law was suggesting I go to a homeless shelter rather than eat at their table. I looked at Daniel. Waited for him to say something. To defend me. To invite me in like any decent human being would. But he just stood there, avoiding my eyes. Please, son. Just one meal. I haven't eaten properly in days. I just want to sit with my family. Daniel's jaw tightened. You know what, Dad? This is exactly why you're in this situation. You never planned properly. You were always reckless. And now you expect us to just bail you out. To take care of you because you made bad choices. Each word was a knife. But I needed to hear this. I needed to know who he really was. I'm not asking for money, Daniel. Just a plate of food. Just to see my grandkids for an hour. The grandkids don't need to see you like this, Jessica snapped. It'll traumatize them. That's when Emma appeared. My sweet Emma, 8 years old with pigtails and her mother's eyes. Grandpa? Is that you? Hi, sweetheart. She tried to run to me, but Jessica grabbed her arm. Emma, go back inside. Now. But that's Grandpa. Why can't he come in? Emma, I said now. My granddaughter looked at me with tears in her eyes as she was pulled away. That broke something in me. Something fundamental. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and cold. Dad, I think you should leave. You're embarrassing yourself, and you're embarrassing us. When you get your life together, when you're back on your feet, then we can talk. But I can't have you showing up here like this. I have a reputation to maintain. A reputation. That's what matters to you. More than your own father. What matters to me is my family. My wife. My children. Their future. And I'm sorry, but you're not part of that picture right now. He started closing the door. Actually, closing it in my face. Daniel, please. Goodbye, Dad. The door shut. I heard the lock click. Through the window, I saw them walk back to their dining room. Laughter resumed within seconds. Like I was never there. Like, I didn't matter at all. I stood on that porch for 5 minutes. Just stood there. An old man in worn-out clothes, alone in the cold evening air. And I cried. Not because I was actually broke. But because I'd just learned the most painful truth of my life. My son didn't love me. He loved what I could give him. And without that, I was nothing to him. But you know what? In that moment of complete heartbreak, something else was born. A determination. A plan. If Daniel wanted to play this game, if he wanted to treat his father like garbage, then he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. I walked away from that house. But I'd be back. Oh yes. I'd be back in a way he'd never expect. The next morning, I met with Tom at his office. I must have looked terrible because the first thing he said was, "Richard, what happened?" I told him everything. Every painful detail. The door is in my face. Jessica's disgust. Emma's tears. Daniel's cold dismissal. By the end, Tom was pacing his office, angry on my behalf. That ungrateful. He started, but I held up my hand. It's okay. Actually, it's perfect. Now I know exactly who he is. And now we move to phase 2. Phase 2. I need you to set up a meeting with Daniel. Tell him there's been a development with my estate. Tell him that despite my bankruptcy, there might be some assets left. A life insurance policy I forgot about. Something worth pursuing. Make it sound legitimate but vague. Make him curious. Tom understood immediately. You want to see if he'll come crawling back the moment money is mentioned. Exactly. But more than that. I want to document everything. I want evidence of who he really is. Because when this is all over, when I reveal the truth, I don't want him claiming he was just having a bad day or that I'm misremembering things. Over the next 2 weeks, Tom played his part perfectly. He called Daniel, mentioned the potential assets, and suddenly, miracle of miracles, my son had time for his poor old dad. Suddenly, I wasn't an embarrassment. I was a potential payday. Daniel agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. Tom wired me up with a recording device. Completely legal in our state. Every word would be captured. When I walked into that coffee shop, Daniel was already there. He saw me, and I watched his face carefully. There was no warmth. No relief that I was okay. Just a calculation. The look of a businessman sizing up a deal. "Dad," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. He didn't stand up. Didn't hug me. Just pointed at a chair like I was a client. "Daniel. Thanks for meeting me. Tom said there might be some money left. A life insurance policy or something. Straight to business. Not, how are you, or, are you eating okay, or, where are you staying? Just money. Yes, potentially. But I need your help accessing it. There's paperwork, and I'm not exactly in a position to. How much are we talking about? Excuse me. The policy. How much is it worth?" I pretended to hesitate. Tom thinks maybe 200,000. Maybe more. His eyes lit up. Actually lit up. "And you need my help to access it?" "Yes. I'd need you to co-sign some documents. Act as my power of attorney temporarily. I'm not in a great financial state to handle legal matters on my own right now. Daniel leaned back, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was calculating. Trying to figure out how much of that $200,000 he could claim for himself. You know, Dad, after what you put me through, after the embarrassment of having my business associates find out my father is broke, I think it's only fair that I'm compensated for my time and effort here. Compensated? Daniel, you're my son. I'm asking for help. And I'm willing to help. For 50%. I almost broke character. Almost stood up and screamed at him right there. 50%. He wanted half of what he thought was my last remaining asset. My own son was trying to rob me while I was down. That seems high, I managed to say. Take it or leave it. I have a busy life, Dad. Jessica and I are planning a vacation to Europe next month. The kids need new iPads. I have expenses. If you want my help, it'll cost you. I pretended to think about it. Let the silence hang there. Finally, I nodded. Okay. 50%. He smiled. Actually smiled like he'd just won something. Great. Have Tom draw up the papers. I'll sign whatever you need. Don't you want to know how I'm doing? Where I'm living? If I'm okay? The smile faded slightly. Dad, I'm here, aren't I? I'm helping you. What more do you want? I want my son back. The boy I raised. The one who used to tell me I was his hero. Daniel's face went cold. That boy grew up. He learned that heroes don't make stupid financial decisions that ruin their families' reputations. You did this to yourself. I'm just trying to salvage what's left. He stood up. Have Tom call me when the papers are ready. I'll stop by and sign them. And Dad? Maybe shower before our next meeting. You smell like you haven't washed in days. He walked out. Left me sitting there. And every word, every heartless sentence, was recorded perfectly on the device hidden in my jacket. I had my evidence. Now it was time to execute the real plan. 3 weeks later, I invited Daniel to Tom's office. Told him the papers were ready. That all he needed to do was sign, and he'd get his $100,000. He showed up 15 minutes early. Couldn't wait to cash in. What he didn't know was that Tom's conference room was filled with people. My financial advisor. My accountant. 3 business partners. And most importantly, a representative from the charitable foundation I'd been planning to create in Margaret's name. When Daniel walked in and saw all those people, he froze. What is this? Sit down, son. We need to talk. I'm not signing anything with all these people here. What kind of ambush is this? Tom spoke up. Mr. Caldwell, please sit down. This will all make sense shortly. Reluctantly, Daniel sat. He looked nervous now. Unsure. The confident businessman facade was cracking. I stood at the head of the table. Looked at my son. And I began. Daniel, for the past 4 months, I've been conducting a test. An experiment, if you will. I needed to know who you really were. Who I raised. Whether the values your mother and I tried to instill in you actually took root, or whether we failed as parents. What are you talking about? I'm not broke, Daniel. I never was. The bankruptcy, the failed investments, all of it was staged. Every penny of my wealth is still intact. In fact, I've made about $2 million more in the market since I supposedly went broke. The color drained from his face. You're lying. Tom slid a folder across the table. Bank statements. Investment portfolios. Property deeds. All in your father's name. All very much active and profitable. Daniel's hands shook as he opened the folder. I watched realization dawn across his face. Horror. Embarrassment. And then anger. You lied to me. You put me through all this as some kind of sick test. I wanted to see who you were when I had nothing to offer you. And you showed me. You turned your own father away from your door. Told him to go to a homeless shelter. Refused to share a single meal with him. And then, the moment you thought there might be money involved, you were right there. Ready to take 50% of what you thought was my last asset. You tried to profit off my suffering. This is insane. You're insane. I'm heartbroken, Daniel. That's what I am. But I'm also clear-headed for the first time in years. Your mother was right. We created someone we don't recognize. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the coffee shop. Daniel's voice filled the room. For 50%. Take it or leave it. You did this to yourself. When it ended, silence. Heavy, crushing silence. One of my business partners, Frank Morrison, spoke up. Daniel, I've known you since you were 10 years old. Your father used to bring you to company picnics. You were a good kid. What happened to you? Daniel just sat there, speechless. I continued. Here's what's going to happen. Everything I own, every asset, every property, every investment, is being placed into a charitable trust. The Margaret Caldwell Foundation. It will fund scholarships for underprivileged children, support homeless shelters, and provide meals for families in need. Your mother always wanted to do more for the community. Now she will. You're cutting me out. Completely. You cut yourself out the moment you closed that door in my face. But I'm not heartless, Daniel. Unlike you, I still believe in second chances. You'll receive a modest trust fund. $50,000 a year. Enough to live comfortably if you're smart about it. But the executive salary? The company car? The expense account? All gone. You're fired, effective immediately. You can't do this. I absolutely can. And I am. Maybe struggling a little will teach you what wealth and privilege never did. Maybe having to actually work for something will remind you of who you were supposed to be. Daniel stood up, knocking his chair back. This is revenge. You're punishing me for one mistake. One mistake. Daniel, you had 94 days to check on me. 3 months to pick up the phone. And you didn't. Not once. That's not a mistake. That's character. Or lack thereof. He looked around the room, desperate for support. Found none. Everyone was looking at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. Emma and Jake, I continued. They'll have trust funds too. For college. For their futures. But those funds won't be accessible until they're 25, and only if they demonstrate genuine character and compassion. I've appointed Tom as trustee. He'll evaluate them yearly. Make sure they're growing up to be better than their father. That struck him deep. I could see it. The realization that his children would be judged against him. And that he was the standard of what not to be. I loved you, son. I still do. But love doesn't mean enabling your cruelty. Love means sometimes letting people face the consequences of their actions. Consider this your consequence. And your opportunity. Prove me wrong. Become the man I always hoped you'd be. Show your kids what redemption looks like. Daniel's eyes were filled with tears now. Real emotion, finally. But I couldn't tell if it was remorse or just self-pity. Get out of my office, Tom said quietly. You're not welcome here. Daniel looked at me one last time. Opened his mouth like he wanted to say something. Then closed it and walked out. The door shut behind him with a soft click. And just like that, it was over. The next few months were strange. Word spread quickly in our social circle about what happened. Some people thought I was brilliant. Others thought I was cruel. A few said I was both. Jessica filed for divorce 6 weeks later. Turns out she was only in it for the money too. Imagine that. She fought for custody of the kids, but Daniel was so broken by then that he didn't put up much of a fight. The kids ended up in split custody, spending half their time with each parent. Emma called me one evening, about 2 months after the revelation. I almost didn't answer, afraid of what she might say. But I did. Grandpa. Hi, sweetheart. Daddy told me what happened. He told me you were never really poor. That you were testing him. Yes, honey. That's true. A pause. Then, did he fail? God, that question. How do you tell an 8-year-old that her father failed a basic test of human decency? He made some choices I didn't agree with, Emma. But people can change. People can learn. Mommy says you're mean. That you took away all our money. I didn't take away anything that was yours, sweetheart. And you'll always be taken care of. Always. I promise you that. Can I still come visit you sometimes? Like we used to. And there it was. The moment that made everything worth it. Anytime you want, Emma. Anytime at all. She started crying. I wanted to run to you that night. When you came to our door. I wanted to hug you so bad. But Mommy wouldn't let me. I know, baby. I know you did. And that tells me you're going to grow up to be an amazing person. You already are. We talked for an hour. She told me about school, about her friends, about how weird everything had become at home. And I listened. Really listened. Something I should have done more of when Daniel was growing up. Maybe if I had, things would be different now. Daniel himself didn't contact me for 3 months. When he finally did, it was a text message. Simple. 4 words. Can we talk? Please. I agreed to meet him. Same coffee shop as before. Neutral territory. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. The designer clothes were gone, replaced with normal, ordinary outfits. He looked like a regular person for the first time in years. Hi, Dad. Daniel. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, he spoke. I've been going to therapy. 3 times a week. Dr. Morrison over on 5th Street. She specializes in, well, she says I have a thing. Narcissistic tendencies. Entitlement issues. A whole bunch of stuff I didn't even know were problems. That's good. That you're getting help. I've been thinking about that night a lot. When you came to my door. And I keep trying to justify it in my head. Keep trying to make it make sense. But I can't. There's no excuse for what I did. For how I treated you. I didn't say anything. Let him continue. Jessica left me. You know that already. And at first, I was angry about it. Blamed you, blamed her, blamed everyone but myself. But then I realized, she left me because I became someone not worth staying for. Just like I became someone you couldn't trust with your legacy. Daniel. No, let me finish. Please. I need to say this. You were right. About everything. I was cruel. I was selfish. I had become everything you and Mom tried to protect me from. And it took losing everything to see it. A tear rolled down his cheek. I don't want your money, Dad. I don't want the company or the properties or any of it. What I want, what I really want, is to earn back your respect. To show Emma and Jake that their father isn't a complete waste of space. To prove to myself that I can be better. How do you plan to do that? I got a job. A real job. Not some executive position handed to me. I'm working at a nonprofit. Housing assistance for families in crisis. 40,000 a year. It's honest work. It's hard work. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm actually contributing something meaningful to the world. I felt something crack inside me. The wall I'd built around my heart since that night on his porch. I'm proud of you for that, son. Don't be proud yet. I have a long way to go. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. And I wanted to ask, do you think someday, maybe, we could rebuild this? Not the money stuff. Just, us. Father and son. I reached across the table and took his hand. Daniel, I never stopped wanting that. Not for a second. We both cried then. Two grown men in a coffee shop, crying like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness takes time. But it was a start. A genuine, real start. It's been a year now since all of this happened. The Margaret Caldwell Foundation is thriving. We've given out 12 scholarships, funded 3 homeless shelters, and provided thousands of meals to families in need. Every time I write one of those checks, I think about Margaret. About how proud she'd be. Daniel is still working at the nonprofit. He got promoted to program director 6 months in. He's good at it. Really good. Turns out all that business acumen I taught him translates pretty well to helping people instead of exploiting them. Emma and Jake visit me every other weekend now. We play board games, watch old movies, and I tell them stories about their grandmother. They're good kids. Better than their father was at their age. Maybe they'll break the cycle. As for Daniel and me, we're getting there. Slowly. He comes over for dinner once a month. We talk about real things now. Not business or money, but life. Feelings. Mistakes. Growth. He apologized to the security guard at his old gated community. Tracked him down and everything. Said sorry for all the times he was dismissive or rude. Small steps. But step in the right direction. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If the test was too cruel. If I had just talked to him instead of putting him through all that. And here's my answer, sometimes people need to lose everything to find themselves. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone you love is let them fail. Let them fall. And then, if they're willing to do the work, help them stand back up. I didn't destroy my son. I saved him from the person he was becoming. A person who measured worth in dollars instead of dignity. Who saw people as transactions instead of human beings. Who confused comfort with happiness and wealth with success. The real lesson here isn't about money. It's about values. About what we pass down to our children beyond bank accounts and property deeds. It's about teaching them that character matters more than reputation. That kindness is worth more than any stock portfolio. That family isn't about what you can get from each other, but what you're willing to give. Margaret used to say, we're not raising children. We're raising adults. And the world has enough successful people. What it needs is more good ones. She was right. As usual. So yeah, I hid my wealth from my son. I tested him when he thought I was at my lowest. And he failed spectacularly. But that failure became the foundation for his transformation. For his redemption. And in the end, I got my son back. Not the entitled, cruel person he'd become. But the boy I raised. The one who used to tell me I was his hero. Maybe someday he'll say that again. And this time, I'll know it's genuine. Because now we both understand what true wealth really is. And it's not something you can put in a bank account or leave in a will. It's the legacy of who you are when no one's watching. The person you become when everything else is stripped away. The values that remain when the money is gone. That's the inheritance that matters. That's what I'm leaving behind now. Not millions of dollars, but a lesson in humanity. In humility. In redemption. And you know what? That's worth more than any fortune I could have ever built. Some people will hear this story and think I was a cruel father. Maybe I was. But I'd rather be a cruel father who saved his son's soul than a generous one who enabled his destruction. As I sit here in my modest apartment, yes, I kept it even though I didn't have to, I look at the photos on my wall. Margaret is smiling at our wedding. Daniel, as a boy, was missing his front teeth. Emma and Jake were at the park last weekend. And I realized something profound. I thought I was testing my son. But really, life was testing me. Testing whether I had the courage to do the hard thing. The painful thing. The thing that might cost me my relationship with my only child. And I passed. Because Daniel is becoming a better man. Not perfect. Not there yet. But growing. Changing. Trying. That's all any of us can do. Try to be a little bit better than we were yesterday. Try to leave the world slightly improved by our presence. Try to teach the next generation that wealth without character is just poverty in a nicer suit. So if you're out there right now, struggling with your own children, wondering if you're doing enough, worrying that you're failing them, let me tell you something. The greatest gift you can give your kids isn't money or privilege or opportunities. It's the chance to develop character. Real, genuine character that's tested and proven. Don't shield them from every hardship. Don't buy their way out of every problem. Don't let them believe that who they are matters less than what they have. Because someday, everything they own might disappear. The money, the status, the comfort. And when that happens, all they'll have left is who they are at their core. Make sure that person is someone worth being. Someone who would share their last meal with a stranger. Someone who would open their door to a parent in need. Someone who measures success not by their bank balance but by the lives they've touched and the good they've done. That's my story. A father who faked poverty to test his son. A son who failed but found redemption. A family broken and slowly mending. And a lesson learned the hardest way possible. But here's the truth I've learned through all of this, the hardest lessons are usually the most important ones. The painful experiences are often the ones that change us most profoundly. And sometimes, the cruelest thing you can do is nothing at all.